Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Lighthouse podcast where we shine God's light on real life topics through faith. I'm your host, Julian Barca, and I'm here with my co host, Leo. How are you doing, bro?
Doing better.
Doing better.
I was
I
a
know
li-
you said your sinus
yeah, I
was
was a bit
acting up.
sick. I
Oof.
completely lost my voice,
Oh, man.
but it's back now.
It's back. It's back.
Whoa.
Oh, the sinus is acting up
Yeah,
again.
it's not.
Hold up.
I've been better, but
Yeah.
bit of a slow week,
Mm,
but a good week.
of course. Always a good week.
A lot of projects going on right now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work maybe 6 months ahead of time.
Mm,
And in the midst of all that, trying to get this podcast down and trying to do this right, trying to take what we're doing seriously. And today's episode looks very serious.
Dude, today's topic is it's deep, guys, and I was about to call them chat, but it's deep. um, it's like we were going on about certain topics, and this certain topic, we were like, dude, we gotta do it. It's time, and it's something that I feel like, as someone that I feel like we're all connected to the audience, we all maybe have gone through or are going through right now, and
Yeah.
that's Christian dating.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, not
I-
just dating,
yeah.
but dating with a very specific caveat.
oh yeah, so when we were going into this topic, we were studying, getting prepared for it, and when I was going on my notes, there was this certain question that just kept on coming back, and I'm like, dude, how do I present this topic when I need some insight on some stuff, you know? And I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
And I feel like I'm one of the audience right now because I need some help on this.
Okay.
And that's, how do you approach Christian dating? And not only that, but how do you approach it when, let's say, your partner doesn't have the same faith traditions that you do?
Yeah.
So how?
Oh.
No, not like
How? Okay.
no,
yeah, well,
but
I have all the answers you could ever imagine. No, this is a hard conversation. And
Oh yeah,
it's just important to say whatever we say now and then in the next few minutes, this is just our way of reflecting on this issue. It's not any kind of official stance or anything. This is just, especially coming from me, this is how I've come to think about this issue, seeing people who've gone through this,
Yeah.
good, bad, ugly situations, and just trying to bring some light. That being said, how about we just dig right into it?
let's do it.
So for those who grew up in a specifically Adventist culture,
Okay.
I think we all pretty much heard growing up, do not date outside of the community. I mean,
yeah.
that's just the language that we grew up hearing
Yeah.
all the time. And we were just taught to be overly cautious. Sometimes I would even say people were just raised to be fearful of
Yeah.
even considering dating outside. And dating outside the faith, let's just be honest. It can lead to some very negative consequences. That's the obvious thing you could say.
Yeah.
And I don't think people who ever told us those things were always coming from an ill intent perspective. They weren't, I
Mhm.
think, intentionally trying to hurt our feelings or offend people or any of that. But a lot of the times what I saw is that the results were often people became very rigid about this issue.
Yeah.
So rigid that in some cases we do see some very damaging and hear some very damaging stories. Can I just show you a personal story that I read online
Yeah.
from someone who experienced this? And well, you know what? It's on Reddit, so it's online. It's not like but at the same time, I didn't really reach out to this individual, and even
Yeah.
though it is online, I didn't want to quite quote it verbatim.
Okay.
So let me just paraphrase. How about I just paraphrase?
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Just paraphrase.
Essentially, mom and her aren't on the best grounds
Mm-hmm.
when she essentially tells her family that she's dating someone who's not within the faith group. Two big things. One, judgment kind of from all corners. The mom herself, directly speaking to the daughter, says two very important things that I think are just very, very painful. One, her relationship will not be blessed by God. And two, her children and her family home won't be blessed by God.
Those are some crazy statements.
I mean, that's how she ends her Reddit post, by saying,
Wow.
"Who says that?"
Wow.
And I feel for that. And I chose that illustration because it highlights, I think, the worst side of these stories. It highlights the worst tendencies, I think, that we see. It's not the way it is everywhere, obviously, but I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes concern kind of it rolls over into control.
Well,
Protection ends up becoming pressure, I think, sometimes. And I think that's where it gets very, very, it can get spiritually damaging, you know, to sense that harsh judgment on someone. But anyway.
I actually have a question for you. But I like how you phrase that about how that worryingness becomes that pressure.
Yeah.
But I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it like that though, man? Like why is there such a high seriousness and maybe like that? I don't want to say pressure, but well, yeah, pressure is a good word for it. Why is that happening right now with dating?
The best way I can see that within our particular, mind you, we're talking about our particular context.
Right
this
now
is very specific to us, but you know, it's also, you see it in other denominations. You see it in many faith groups. It's the same kind of pressure, the same kind of. The main reason, and particularly within the SDA culture, is because there's a very unique vision of what our mission is, so to speak. There's a very unique way in which we feel called to live, and there's a deep desire to be faithful to that. So there's this perception that if someone comes in from the outside and there's a relationship that forms out of that, then there's a potential that there will be a derailing of that mission. There will be a derailing of that faith. So that's where the concern comes in. But that, and this is where it gets very difficult, that has a lot to do with the way one actually understands his or herself's identity within the faith group. There are some people who grew up in very, very conservative circles, and you know what? That lifestyle gives them structure and gives them meaning and gives them purpose. And it makes sense that they're probably going to want to find someone who matches that vision. For other people, there are variations and there are nuances even within our church. People who aren't exactly, you know, die hard about this or very or ultra concerned about that issue. So depending on where you yourself stand spiritually depends what you yourself are going to look for in a relationship. That's a hard thing for a lot of perhaps older people to maybe swallow or digest, but it is a reality, and we can't same thing like last time we were doing this, like we can't deny that we all watch, you know, films or pop culture things. Same way we can't deny that there are people within our church communities that, you know, they'll practice Sabbath, but they're still probably gonna go out and get in the lake or something. You know, it's like where there are some people who, you know, you don't do anything like that on Saturday. It's a very, and a lot of that people will call that legalism, but it's really comes down with how one understands obedience. So that's really the issue, man. That's always gonna be the issue. Is one being faithful to the way one understands their calling, their mission, their faith? And that's why people get very concerned about how and who we date. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And going into another question, I like how you explained that, and thank you about that. But what does the Bible say about this? Like, what is I know you know those quoted scriptures. We got them here.
Yeah.
But what does those most quoted scriptures say about interfaith relationships?
That's the thing. Well, the two most quoted ones are always going to be 2 Corinthians 6:14, and which is the do not be unequally yoked.
Oh, I got another thing for
that. And then 1 Corinthians 7. Well, go ahead and say what you have to say about that.
Dude, okay. 2 Corinthians 6:14, right?
Yep.
Unequally yoked. Dude, what is yoke? Yolk, I'm thinking you're making an egg. The egg yolk.
Yeah, the egg yolk.
What does it mean?
It is that word, by the way. You're not wrong, right? About that. Yugo, in Spanish, so the best way I can illustrate it is that think of two animals that you need to plow or do something. Usually, there was a device that would turn and spin, and you needed animals to push that. I mean, it was too much work for a human being to push. You were grinding things down basically with a big piece of, you know, wood in the middle, and so by turning it you would spin it, anyway, it was like you get the point.
A plow, right?
A plow of type, I forget the proper name, but Imagine two animals that are walking next to each other. One animal's big and powerful. One animal maybe of a different build. So one's kind of going this way, one's kind of going that way.
Yeah.
That's the imagery that Paul's trying to paint for you.
Mm.
But, and this is where it gets complex, because the context of that passage is not specifically about dating or marriage.
Really?
That doesn't mean that it cannot apply to
Wow.
that, but the main context Paul is talking about, he's referencing the story of Exodus, where God calls his people and it says, "You are to be my people. I am to be your God. You are called to holiness. So separate yourselves from the nations around you. Become my people. Do not become unclean." What does a believer have to do with an unbeliever?
Yeah.
Those are very strong words, but those are Paul's words.
Yeah.
And Paul is quoting God. So
Wow.
there is that element. You see, this is the confusing part about reading the Bible and about reading the New Testament in particular, or any part of the Bible in general. There are these strong statements that ultimately, when they play down into real life, are always going to be more complex. Does that make sense? So, for example, what does a believer have to do with an unbeliever, Paul says, right?
Mhm.
But then in the other passage that I reference about 1 Corinthians 7, he specifically is telling couples who are interfaith couples. Mind you, I'm pretty sure they were interfaith before one of them converted to Christianity. But he tells those couples, stay together. Do not separate. For wouldn't it be great if the one who does believe to rub some of that off,
Yeah.
to bring the other person to,
Yeah.
And I think that's why many people, first off, that's why many young people feel okay with wanting to date or marry, because they kind of have this conviction that they're going to be able to reel this person in. There's pros and cons to that, and it's always a difficult story. It's never going to be, sometimes it maybe is more straightforward, but it's never going to be that straightforward. So anyway, let me just reel back in a little bit.
Go for it.
So going back to 2 Corinthians 6:14, it is not specifically about dating. The primary context is about how the faith community lives and interacts with the world around them. So if you are in a church and there is someone in that church community saying something like, you know what, we don't need to believe in God and we don't need to pay attention to God, and whoa, what's going on here? And we should just go and worship that stuff over there. We're inviting, let's say, blatant idolatry.
Yeah.
Paul is saying, why would you let that happen in your church community? So can that apply to a marriage? Yes. Yeah, you can imagine how one person who has no desire to walk with you toward Jesus pulling you this way and you want to walk this way.
Yeah.
Going back to the animal agriculture imagery. But, and I say this with a lot of caution, there are plenty of churches that I've seen in my life with no interfaith marriages, by the way, or couples, who are very unequally yoked. You have people who are very much interested in trying things and growing the church, and you have people who might be very cold and very hard and very blunt, might be just very rude people, people whom you don't immediately see the fruits of the Spirit. So you have a church that's trying to move forward, and yet you have people who are holding it back because of criticism and judgment, or just power plays and power struggles, and we've seen it in our lives.
Oh yeah.
So even a church with no interfaith couples or marriages, guess what? They can be unequally yoked too, because there's something happening in there that's pulling the church this way and that's where we're being pulled apart as a community.
Yeah.
Paul is saying, do not let that happen, specifically when it comes to one, idolatry.
Yeah.
And then, of course, many other things that follow under that.
And I got a question about that.
Yeah.
Idolatry. What could that be in the modern sense?
Okay. This is great for like a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
I like the traditional use of the word idolatry as relating to worshiping pagan deities.
Okay.
We can get to that another point at another point. But yeah, you can obviously treat your phone as idolatrous. You can look at your position as chief elder as idolatrous. You can look at your role as the techie of the church, right?
Yeah.
And you know all this stuff about technology, and no one can touch your ground because you're above everyone else. Idolatry can happen in any setting, in any role of the church. You're the lead musician. Oh my gosh. It's like, don't tell me how to play this chord,
Yeah.
Idolatry happens anywhere. So we need to be careful with how we let those things happen in our church.
Yeah.
But anyway, the harder question will always be, oh, I'm sorry, there's like one very important thing that I forgot to mention.
Go for it.
Now that we've talked about a little bit about our personal background, where we grew up in, and then now we've talked about scripture, it must be made very, very clear that this church, and for that matter, zillions of other churches and denominations, there is no strict rule in our manual or anything that dictates whom one should date or marry.
Clip that.
That needs to be made very, very clear.
Yeah.
Okay? Our church does not position itself in a way where it declares that it has the role or the right to tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
That being said, there are pastors, spiritual leaders who are going to be highly discouraged from participating, maybe not participating, but definitely officiating, like officially, the actual wedding ceremony. Yeah, so that needs to be made clear. Some churches will be stricter on that. Some churches will be more harsh on that. Some will be more lenient. But my point in saying is that when it comes to what Scripture says, it doesn't dictate specifically whether or not you should date within a denominational group. That's not the role of Scripture. What it does point us to, both of those passages, the 2 Corinthians 6:14 and the 1 Corinthians 7, is that, you know what? I think Paul would probably say that it's best to initiate a relationship with someone who already is walking in the same direction you're walking. I think Paul would say that. For people who are already in a marriage or in a setting that is already, interfaith or believer, unbeliever, I think Paul would not be the first one to say separate. Yeah. Paul would probably be the first one to say, can we make this work? And is there space where Christ can grow in that home? But that being said, we can understand why pastors, spiritual leaders, youth leaders, families would at least want to tell their children or their young people, try to aim within, because it eliminates a lot of those problems. It eliminates a lot of those issues. But at the end of the day, and this is why I brought up that story earlier, at the end of the day, there's no rule book that declares that this is the way it must be. And people will find themselves in their own personal journeys as to how and who they're going to date. So the church has no role in declaring its personal opinion on how you should live out your personal life. And that would be an overreach. Let's put it that way. But at least let's try and understand why there's that concern. Yeah, it's there for a reason, and I think most of it comes from a good place. Even if a lot of the times it's usually applied with a lot of rigidity, a lot of judgmentalism. And that's where we as a church need to be cautious and careful. Are we saying this the right way? Is our tone showing that we care, that we love? We need to let those things also come into the conversation, whether you're a parent or a Theo or a grandpa or whatever. Some people really want to preserve that purity, I guess you could say. Yeah. But even that can become idolatrous. So that's where we got to be careful. Wow. Anyway, this next section scares me probably the most, talking about.
Oh yeah, I know.
Where faith kind of meets culture,
I got a perfect question for that though. How can dating principles bring emotional and spiritual maturity in this modern world? How?
Yeah. So Christian dating principles. We live in a culture that says everything must be immediate. Yeah. Everything has to be now. And there's a lot of like very surface level attraction, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I mean, just think of, again, going back to that swipe culture, yes, no, yes, no. I mean, look at all the dating apps that we have in our world. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And your emotions everything's autonomy. It's about me. I control my decisions. I control my emotions, and so you kind of just listen to your own, you become an echo chamber. That's kind of from what I've seen, that's kind of what our modern culture tends to aim for. So Christian principles in dating, like waiting for till marriage to engage in certain activities, and even how fast we move to things like hand holding or kissing or whatever, or physical touch and intimacy, those are often going to be seen as outdated, and people get mocked for doing that. Yeah. I've been mocked personally
Dude,
about.
I saw a special story about that where they dated for 4 years. This couple, they never they didn't kiss each other once, and they
Wow.
waited for that first kiss that day of when they were married.
This particular subject is probably worthy of its own
Yeah,
entire podcast. There are so many ministries out there dedicated to helping couples navigate this issue.
yeah,
But what we just want to say for right now is, look, now that we've discussed our background, we've discussed what the Bible does and doesn't say.
yeah.
Now it's important that we understand why we still suggest that when it comes to just dating in general,
Mhm.
there are some principles that we can still hold on to and say these principles are worth moving forward with. So I like the idea very much of waiting,
Yeah.
and not just the physical stuff, but even living together,
Mm.
waiting. So it shouldn't be seen as a punishment.
Yeah,
I think
no,
that's a
no.
problem. We often see it as a, we're depriving ourselves again of that immediate kind of joy, that immediate kind of. But that shouldn't be the perspective that we have. Let me put
Bluetooth
it this way:
disconnected.
when we wait and when we actually take our time to date someone intentionally, it lets us and it gives us time to ask harder questions about the relationship. Do I really even know this person at all? Do I understand how they think? Do I understand their emotional process? Or going back to what we were talking about previously, do I really understand the way they do faith, the way they practice their Christianity? Do they even care at all about my tradition, right? That's a good question to ask. Are they even listening to the rhythms? If you're an SDA, you have very, very clean rhythms. I'm sorry, or very clear rhythms, let's put it that way, right? When it comes to the way maybe we eat certain things, and especially the weekly rhythm.
Yeah.
The work and rest, the work and rest. That's essential for many people. So
Yeah.
if your partner sees that rhythm and completely ignores it, that's a valid question to ask. Why are you ignoring that? That's a very, and that goes vice versa. I mean, that goes the other way around too. Are you noticing their patterns? Are you seeing the way they do things, and do you care about it at all? Do you? I mean, that's a valid question. Many people will not ask that because they're so caught up in the immediateness of it all,
Yeah.
the quickness of it all, the superficial stuff of it all. So,
Mm.
anyway, any comments or ideas on that?
Dude, it's stuff we are seeing with people every day now.
Yeah.
Like I have, well, it's a story that I know where this couple, they just dated this quick. They dated this quick. They got married like couple months, dude, like 3 months.
Yeah.
And for what? Because they wanted. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't in love or nothing of that, but what I'm saying is they wanted it quick because they wanted what they wanted it now.
Yeah.
They wanted the stuff they wanted to do now.
And they didn't get time to ask those questions.
They didn't ask those questions. So then what happens? 5 months later, they get divorced.
Yeah.
And what happens?
And
then?
you think that story would be rare, but
It's not.
not at all.
It's normal nowadays. It's like it's a regular day now. But
by the way, that
yeah.
was also normal in Jesus' day.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Maybe not so much within Jewish communities,
Mhm.
but definitely within the Roman Greek world. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Marriages were not taken
That's
that seriously.
wow.
And it's funny because in social perceptions, they wanted it to be serious. If you were a Roman and you wanted to run for office, they wanted to see you as a family man, you know?
Yeah.
But you could have affairs and all these things. And, so there was already a broken culture in Jesus' day and Paul's day regarding dating and marriage, just as much as we see a broken one in our day.
Mhm.
So when we read these principles from the Bible, again, going back to the animals walking together, is this couple actually walking together? Are we walking towards Jesus? Are we walking towards an understanding that is shared, a
Yeah.
shared understanding of what the goal is here? Do
Mhm.
we care about the same things? Those are all valid and important questions. And I just want to kind of mention this. We shouldn't see the waiting like I said, as a punishment, but also when it comes to the way you build that kind of emotional foundation for the relationship, I want to say that the biggest strength that we have when it comes to pushing these principles and asking young people to try this, to really wait, take it slow, is that at the end of the day, it makes you a stronger person emotionally. So you can have it all, and you can get it fast, and you can go with the moment and the fleetingness of the moment. But at the end of the day, I honestly think that the reason why these principles still work and why it's important to pray together, why it's important to ask these questions, is because we're the ones that come out at the end of it in a much more emotionally more responsible position.
Yeah.
And that's what I really want our listeners to take away, that Christian dating is never easy.
It's not.
Whether you come from a very conservative background, a more liberal background, a more progressive, it doesn't matter. You still got to ask kind of the same questions.
Yeah.
Is this going to actually benefit me in the long run? And can I wait? Can I actually take the time to wait? Because we've all been irresponsible, I think. We've all done things and crossed lines. And those are the things that I think particularly older people also look at and say, you, from experience, possibly, watch out and be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful who you date. That's a valid thing to tell a young person.
Oh,
we,
yeah.
we get very offended sometimes. But those are very, very valid reasons to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that as a young person, you know? So anyway.
And I actually have something to add to that. It's a very short story. Some people know my testimony. I gave it a while back. Thank God, we're here. But just how Leo's telling me about those questions that we need to say, those questions that need to be talked about, not the wants and the do's now. Those were stuff that I was struggling in the start with my relationship when I was away from my relationship with God. And I'll tell you this, just how you said there's positives, dude, I felt those right when I came back. My relationship has skyrocketed with my girlfriend. And it's
because you're asking different questions now.
We're asking serious questions. Asking questions that not only benefit me, but benefit her. And not for the nows, but for the 2 months from now, from the year from now,
It's very liberating.
And it's something very, I like how you phrase the principles emotional and mature, because that's how they are.
And responsible.
And responsible, because I can say I was so irresponsible with disrespecting myself, my partner, my family.
Yeah.
And dude, I'll tell you this is something so important.
It is.
And something I need to say to the audience is we're not perfect.
No.
None of us are.
No one is.
And just keep going, and that's something we need to do, man.
We need to be intentional about how we do this.
Yeah.
So going back to the very beginning, that first question you asked me, how do we even think about dating outside of our faith? You know what? There's no rule that says you can't. But if that's a choice you decide to make, you're still gonna ask the same questions. Yeah. Whether it's someone in or out, because sometimes theological differences, by the way, they can hurt a relationship. Sometimes there's just too much of a gap, and does not mean that you're bad people. It doesn't mean that it's just not gonna be compatible. Those are things that are serious, and we have to think about. There's a reason why the voices maybe sometimes are a bit cranky in older voices, but hey, they're there for a reason. At the same time, we cannot also assume that every relationship that happens where it's interfaith, whether it's a dating or whether it's married, we cannot assume either that those are doomed to fail.
Yeah, we can't.
It's not our place to assume that.
It's like the thing
the
about
Delilah
the Delilah
thing. Yeah. We were talking about this. There are so many people who will use that story and assume that every person that comes into those doors and they're dating someone who is not, of the same background, that they're immediately going to pull them into the worst possible situation. We cannot be the ones to make those judgments. No one should be in that position. We should always approach it with caution, with care, with gentility, with humility, and always wanting to bring people up. Anyway, I think we're kind of out of time. How about we just kind of recap these principles?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of speed around it, just very fast. Date someone who shares your direction, not just your desires.
Ooh, okay.
Ask, are we helping each other grow in Christ?
Okay.
Not just do you pray before meals, but are you actually asking hard questions about faith? Set boundaries early and not in the heat of the moment. This is where most of us mess up.
Oh, yeah.
Don't improvise on the spot.
Yeah.
So involve a community. Do not just be private with your relationship. Be willing to discuss it, talk about it. Your cousin, your tia, your mom, someone who can give you some kind of. And like I said, going back, that's why I brought that first story. Parents, think about the way you speak to your children
Oh,
about
yeah.
this. Think about the way are you gonna say something that will anger,
Mhm.
or are you gonna say something that will bring up and uplift? Anyway, I'm sorry. I could just
You're good.
finish
Go ahead. Go
finish the
ahead.
last few points. Be honest about faith. Don't minimize it. And don't hide it. Faith is important.
Ooh.
At some point, you might just wake up and say, "I want to grow closer to Christ," and you've been dating for 5 years in a Christless relationship. So we need to be careful about that. Don't be honest about the faith. Don't minimalize. Don't trivialize faith. At some point, you're going to think about it very seriously. Look for kindness. Look for humility, emotional maturity, and please look for integrity.
Mm.
These are much more important. These are the hardest things to develop when you're growing up, when you're a young person. We mess up hard on these things. But when you're looking for someone, make sure that they exhibit those qualities. Yeah. No one exhibits them perfectly, but you want to aim for that.
Yeah.
Pray, not just for the person, God, please send me something. Pray for yourself, man.
Yeah.
And that we can't stress that enough. And I just want to close that with that today. Ask God to shape you into the kind of person who is worthy of dating, who is
Yeah.
worthy of marrying. For some of us, it takes very hard blows. For others, it's like a flower just growing, and it's beautiful to see that. We would love to see relationships that grow healthily and that grow beautifully, and we wish that for anyone that chooses to date. Um,
Yeah,
but
man.
yeah,
Dude, thank you for your insight today, man. I really appreciate it. And it helped me with not only my relationship, but with how you said at the end, yourself.
yeah,
Because that's the key, man. It's how you have that
it all
unity.
comes down to you.
It all comes down to you. It all comes down to what you're going to choose.
All the
what you're gonna
responsibility
say,
will always come
what you're
down
gonna
to
do.
you.
And it's like those older voices that we hear that maybe we're like, but they're bars. They're saying bars. They're being factual. They're having that advice. And for all those listeners out there that if this is hitting right to your heart, turn straight to God. And just know that, like we said earlier, we're here to give insight. We're not giving a final answer, but we're trying to help as much as we can. And we're going to close it off here. Thank you guys for watching today. If you guys have any comments or anything you would like to share,
Send it our way.
send it our way. If you have a topic you'd like to talk about, send it as well. God bless and stay shining.